All right, so in your notes packet 3.52, where it talks about variations, what it means is everything we've talked about so far. The converse, inverse, contrapositive, okay? But what we're going to practice today is deciding which of those are equivalent. And we just talked about that equivalent statements are the ones that have the same values for the last column. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do is, using truth tables, prove that if P then Q and if not Q then not P are equivalent. So here's what I would like you guys to try. For both of these, you're making a truth table. Okay, so the first one is kind of simple because that's all you're doing. P, Q, and then if P then Q. And then over here, what do we have to do for P and Q? We're negating both of them, so I'm going to do not P, not Q, and then you got to do if not Q, then not P. Why don't you guys take a few minutes now? You can use your gold sheet to fill this in and to fill this in. Let me know if you have questions. Let me know if you're not quite sure what I need to do. Okay, so fill in PQ just like we had. Do you need this or no? Got it? Do you have a gold sheet? Have you next to you, so I'll give you some right. All right, as you guys are finishing up, let's have you check your answers and maybe put a star by this example because this will be something that you want to be familiar with. So for the first one, we have true, false, true, true. Now if you did this one, if not Q then not P, it's true, false, true, true. Are there any questions? Do you agree? Do you have the same things? So now we're trying to see if they're equivalent. So that means we're checking the last column and we see that they have identical truth values, right? So what's going to happen, we're going to say, since the last column of the truth table above are, and then cross this off, identical, the statements, if P then Q, and if not Q then not P, are equivalent. And we can write this as, and then you just copy the statements with this triple equal sign, which means equivalent. Okay? So what we've just done is we've proven, basically, is that the truth value of the conditional and its contrapositive are always the same. So, for example, for this problem right here, for B, if you live in Illinois, no, if you live in Chicago, then you do not live in Wisconsin. Is that true? Right? Like if we're in Chicago, then you're not in Wisconsin. Let's write the contrapositive of this. So if we got to negate this, what would that be? If we, or you, live in Wisconsin, then, because I'm negating it, what do I have to do with this part? You don't live in Chicago. Does that make sense? Is it true? It is, right? If you live in Wisconsin, you don't live in Chicago. So when you say the first conditional and when you say it's contrapositive, you're essentially saying the same exact thing, but you're just using different words, okay? So that's why we would say conditional and contrapositive are equivalent because they have the same truth value. Why don't you flip the page? We're going to do the same thing for the next two. And that is for the conditional and the inverse. So over here, I'm going to ask you guys to do PQ, if P then Q, PQ again, and now in here we need not P, not Q, and then if not P, then not Q. Again, take a moment to fill these in, and you're going to see what the last column is for this one. So let's have you check your answers if you're finished. For the first one, we have true, false, true, true. And what I've got for this one, it's true, true, false, true. So the last column is not the same, right? So for a conditional and the inverse, they're not going to have the same meaning. They're not going to have the same truth value. So since the last column of the truth tables above are not identical, the statements, I'm not going to fill that in, are not equivalent. And the symbol for not equivalent, you would just take this equivalent sign and cross through it. All right, does that make sense? I'm going to go over one more thing on the next page. Okay, so if you're ready, let's flip the page, because this is what your homework is about tonight. How do you negate a conditional statement? So this is the beginning of 3.6, okay? Here is a statement. If you get at least 95% average on homework, then you will get a 2% bonus. So to negate a conditional statement, we haven't done this before, here's the formula. You need to actually change it into an and statement. So if P then Q becomes, when it says to write the negation, P and not Q. Let me tell you what that sounds like for this. If you get at least 95% average on homework, that's my P, then you get a 2% bonus. That's my Q. So listen to this. To negate it, you got 95% on homework and you did not get the bonus. Right? Is that negated? Like you met the requirement, but I didn't give you the bonus. So the statement has been negated. So we have time. Let's make another truth. Well, no, you already did two. We don't have to do this. So the idea is this. The negation of a conditional statement, because we already did two, of if P then Q is P and not Q. So this is, again, one of those formula thingies, or you just need to remember if it says write a negation of an if and then statement, you change it to an and negate it. So let's just do this one. Example 2 at the bottom here. Write the negation of the following. If there's a lot of snow, then all schools will be closed. So the first piece, this is my P, and where it says assign symbols, sometimes you're going to see where like you would write it all, there's a lot of snow. I'm okay if you guys just underline and label it like that. And for Q, all schools will be closed. All right, makes sense. How would we negate that? Before we do that, it says, write the given statement in symbolic form. That means if P, then Q. To write the negation, I would write P and not Q. And now to write the negation in words, well, there is a lot of snow. Just like today when we thought maybe there's going to be an ice day where everything freezes over and it didn't, so we have school. There's a lot of snow, and how do I negate Q? It says all schools will be closed. So how could we negate that? All schools are open, or you could say all schools are not closed. So I'm going to write that. Okay. Are there any questions? Nope. All right. Your homework tonight is in the packet. So like I've mentioned earlier in class, if you look at section 3.5, some of you did not get to this. This is page 73 in your packet. Please make sure you do page 73 and page 74. Do we have a minute for you to write this? On page 74, if you write it, this is what you're doing, what I just went over. Okay, so you have 4 problems where you're given an if and then statement, and you write the negation, and you're using this rule. Okay? So if you happen to do this, because some people worked ahead, please make sure you correct it if you did it in a different way. Any questions? All right.